Jordan Reid, you were on 1 year ago and you are back 2 nights before the draft. How are you, sir?
Good. It's a pleasure being back. I always enjoy talking Vikings with you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a Vikings themed show, as you could have guessed. And we got a big panel here tonight. And we're going to go through several questions about the Vikings in the draft. And I'm going to go out of the gate. You probably have heard these before. So if we get on your nerves, just go with us. My first one's on Kellen Mond. And I want to know, in your estimation, he seems kind of like the lost man in the group on the Vikings roster. I don't know if it's because Zimmer didn't care for him or blah, blah, blah. But where would you rank him in this draft class based on your criteria? Would he be a Matt Corral type, or would he be even lower than that if he was in this group?
Oh, he probably would be lower than those guys. And I actually liked Kellen Mond when he was coming out. But the phrase that I constantly use with him is that he was consistently inconsistent during his time at Texas A&M. And if you notice, accuracy is the thing that always worried me with Kellen. But he was very young, even though he was a 4-year player when he was at Texas A&M. He was 21 years old. So you very rarely see that, especially when a quarterback that's a 4-year starter, somebody that's 21 years old coming out. But he just looked so different in so many games. Like he played well against LSU and some others. And then there were some games of where he just looked really, really bad. So I think it's just a confidence thing with him right now. And I was happy to see Kevin O'Connell come out and say some positive things about him, just because it just seems like the last regime, they just didn't have a lot of overly glowing things to say about him when talking about him. So having that type of backing from a new regime, maybe he can look like a different player this year.
Okay, so Vikings fans shouldn't necessarily write him off.
No, I mean, obviously he's not going to be a starter of Kirk Cousins, but as far as being that number 3 guy, I think he can be that.
Okay, fair enough. Sally, what do you got for our guy Jordan?
Well, you come out the gate with the controversial Kellen Mond question. I simply just wanted to ask Jordan what he's been up to since the last time we saw him. He's had a little bit of a career shift. So, yeah, Jordan, just fill us in with what you've been up to.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle transitioning to ESPN mid-draft season. I started officially with ESPN November 1. So, just a blessing to be here working alongside Todd McShay, Mel Kiper, Matt Millich. It's a great situation to be in with those guys. Never even dreamed of being in a situation like this so early in my career, but working with those guys has been a blast. Being alongside Mel, of course, who I consider the godfather of the NFL draft. It's been pretty cool working with him every day. Todd McShay as well. So it's just a great situation to be in.
Ron, what do you got?
Well, I'll kind of continue with that. Well, first of all, congratulations on making the move to ESPN when we had you on last year. I know you're at a different venture. And I don't know if you know this, but before we had Nate Burleson on, and he wasn't on CBS Good Morning, and then he was after. So I don't know, maybe we just catapult careers even more. So Bleav in Vikings, and Bryant McKinnie can take some of that that kudos there. But anyways, so working alongside Mel Kiper, obviously you said you call him the godfather, and I think most people do, no matter what they think about his opinions. I mean, the dude has been around for, 30, 40 years almost doing that job. And now every network, every NFL site has their own Mel Kiper. And that's what it's all based on. What is it like working with someone like that, where that's what he is? It's like bracketology with Joe Lunardi, where it's the one guy kind of started it all. And now you have to bring in your expertise and your thoughts into it to be able to mold well with him, but also be unique enough to give a different light.
Well, it's great. And with Mel, he's just an encyclopedia of information. Like, there isn't anything that he could forget. Like, he could tell you how many pancake blocks B-Mac had his freshman season, like at Miami. Like, he could tell you little things like that. So there's just so many different things that he can bring to the table, and Mel doesn't forget anything. Like I said, he's just a wealth of knowledge. Everything that he's been through, all the experiences, he's just been an open book and a guide to everything. But he's also welcoming to new ideas, fresh perspectives as well, especially with the NFL draft changing in so many different ways. Mel has done a really good job of changing with those trends. He's not somebody that's just my way or the highway, like a lot of times you see with older evaluators. So that's the great thing about Mel, is that he's welcoming and he's open to all new ideas as well.
Also, is his hair real? You don't need to answer if you don't want to, but
it is real. I can't confirm.
Got it.
Hey, B-Mac, it's been a couple weeks since we've talked to you or done the show in general. We had some scheduling snafus. And when we were scheduling this program with Jordan and whatnot, you said you were heading to California for America's Got Talent. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so you have an NFL choir, and they keep calling me back, and they got scheduled there.
A choir?
Yeah, it's a whole NFL choir.
Okay.
I've done stuff during Super Bowl. They always have an event, like an NFL gospel event, and I've been a presenter, and I've probably been in the choir a couple times too. But during COVID, we did something, and then they called again for America's Got Talent. And the crazy part about it is, the initial email I got was I thought we were just like doing a guest pop up. Why did I find out like the day of? We're contestants. We audition. So, yeah.
Who are some other names that are in this choir?
Tommy Harris was supposed to be there, so I think he may join us if we ever have to go back. We got, we do it again or whatever. But what's crazy? It's like a lot of the guys I don't really know. Like y'all may know them, but I never played. But I don't remember playing against any of them. But I mean, everybody had to say who they played for and everything. Some played at the same time as me. I just wasn't familiar with a lot of people.
And you're still not familiar. Apparently, you're still not familiar.
Like 4 or 5 days. There was a guy named Nick Roach.
Defensive lineman, right, or linebacker, something like that.
Linebacker, yeah, to play for Chicago. So I was like, oh, okay, because I played against you. There was
wasn't memorable.
Guys. There were some guys who played now. Named Isaiah. I don't remember everybody's last name because they were saying by their first names. Like, so Isaiah plays for Buffalo Bills right now. There was a couple guys.
McKenzie, wide receiver, probably.
Oh, okay.
Little guy
from Miami. Just so happened.
So they had you come on there, but you didn't like get to rehearse first because you didn't know you were going on.
I thought we were just doing like a guest pop up from like the NFL choir is going to do like a guest pop up. That's what I thought we were doing. So we had rehearsed. Mm-hmm. We had a couple of rehearsals. Like they had one in Atlanta, but the day I left Atlanta, I had to go to Jersey. So I watched it on Zoom. And then we had some when we got to LA. But the initial email that went out was made it seem like it was like a guest pop-up thing.
Did the episode air?
Sent another email out. I didn't see the second email. I only seen the first one. So where it changed, because I wasn't the only person who wasn't aware. Because I was like, wait. Because we met Terry Crews and he was talking about getting like guesses and everything, and I'm saying like yeses for what? Like they were just guests on here, like and then it ended up being a little bit more than that.
So did the episode already air?
No.
Okay.
When will that air?
Ron wants to know.
Sure. Somebody said like in August, but it may be before that too. I'm not sure.
Oh my God!
When I find out, I'll let y'all know.
How can we wait till August for this?
Just when I thought that your life couldn't get even more interesting, B-Mac, you come out and you're singing in a choir and America's Got Talent.
Right. It's like a big talent show.
Wow. Who were the judges? We can get back to I'm just fascinated
Simon
by
Cowell
this.
was one of them.
Simon was there? Okay.
Howie, he was sick that day. So it was only 3 judges that day instead of 4. It's normally 4.
I don't know who else is on there. Sharon
I
Osbourne.
Heidi Klum is one.
Oh, yeah.
And it was some other lady. Wasn't familiar with her.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll have to call in and vote for you.
Yeah. You keep us scheduled on the air date. Yeah, because I guess when you start to think of it, August really isn't too far away, as scary as that is. Which is a good thing for football purposes. Cody, in Texas, your first time on with Jordan Reid. What do you got for his draft brain?
What's up, Jordan? Big fan of your Vikings work over the past couple of years. And then definitely your work you're doing right now with ESPN. I got a couple questions, but I'm going to try to keep it short. Why is there not more love on Desmond Ridder? I don't know if this is a smokescreen, but we know he ran a 4.5. I personally have him over Malik Willis for both Atlanta and Pittsburgh. Malik Willis would be good for Carolina, though, I think, because he'll run for his life behind the offensive line. But what's your thoughts on Desmond Ridder? You think he's the best quarterback in the class? Because that's definitely the tape to me shows that's what he is.
Yeah, Desmond's one of the more polarizing prospects in this draft class just because of he was really inconsistent throughout his career, but he has 43 wins and 47 career games played. So he's the ultimate winner. He has the third most wins in FBS history of any quarterback. So he's proven that he can win on the collegiate level. He has the frame that you're looking for at the position. He's kind of built like Marcus Mariota in a sense. Just kind of has that slinky build, very strong arm, understands how to get through and execute through progressions, has plenty of speed. And I think he's one of the better dual threat quarterbacks in this draft class, but he's not as strong of a runner as Malik Willis is, and he's not as elusive either, but he does have some of that long stride ability in order to score touchdowns in that aspect. They use him quite a bit in his own read run game. He had plenty of runs like that against Notre Dame. He scored a touchdown in that game too, of where he was able to use his legs. So the thing that a lot of people are worried about with him is just the ball placement. He'll have a beautiful throw, and then he'll come back and he'll dirt the ball, throwing a swing pass to the running back, or he'll sell it over his head. So just those little pockets of inconsistencies with his accuracy, I think that's the biggest worry about with him. But it wouldn't surprise me. I still think he's going to end up going in the first round. But it wouldn't surprise me if he goes like 20 to the Steelers. I think they like him quite a bit. Or if somebody trades into the back half of the first round, maybe that 30 or 32 overall, 31 or 32 overall in order to come up and get him. So I still think he's going to end up going. I still think he's going to go in the first round. I can't talk tonight for some reason. But I still think he's going to be a first round pick.
Oh, for sure. I'd love it if Willis went to 6 and Ritter went to 8. I wanted to sneak in one more real quick. We know that wide receivers, it's crazy talent in the draft this year. What position has less prospect value this year due to that wide receiver talent being more so than usual?
Said you kind of went in and out. What was your question again?
I'm sorry about that. What position has less prospect value this year due to the rise of the wide receivers in the draft?
Ooh, that's a good question. If I had to think of one position that's pretty weak this year, I think interior defensive line is a little bit weak. I think there's a bit of a drop off after the second round, I would say. I mean, it's strong at the top with Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis. Then second round, you got like Travis Jones, DeMarvin Leal, Perry and Winfrey is another name. Logan Hall is another guy that's starting to catch some steam. But after the second round, there's a bit of a precipitous drop off after those guys. So I think the interior defensive line, which is a position that Minnesota could look to address, especially after letting Michael Pierce go, they could look to get some help with Harrison Phillips and then also Dalvin Tomlinson, maybe for some depth purposes. I think they could look to address that probably in the middle to late rounds, but it's slim pickings in those rounds with this group.
Yeah, you got to wonder if that's going to impact their decision makings in those first 2 rounds with those defensive tackles going out after that.
Yeah, it
Appreciate
could.
It,
There's
man.
a lot of different directions. Absolutely. There's a lot of different directions that Kwesi could go.
Speaking of Kwesi, in this digital Vikings community, we've talked a lot about how unpredictable this feels because there's no track record. And this is his first time doing it. So if he indeed pulls off some sort of shocker on Thursday night for the Vikings, what would that be in your estimation? If he does something we're like, holy crap, what would that be?
Wide receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't rule that out, honestly, just because I think he's one of those GMs that looks towards the future, which is the right viewpoint to have. And I know with the way they have constructed the roster, they're really fixated on the now, but it wouldn't surprise me if they go ahead and get a succession plan in for Adam Thielen, who struggled a little bit with durability. And then we know Justin Jefferson, they're probably going to have to give him a stake in the team for how much money he's going to command on the open market. So it wouldn't surprise me if they go ahead and try to get a succession plan in at wide receiver. Jamison Williams from Alabama is somebody that I think they could take a liking to. I think he would really fit in well with Kevin O'Connell's offense. Chris Olave from Ohio State or Garrett Wilson, either one of those guys I think would be really good fit. So I would go with wide receiver.
It almost sounds like you wouldn't be shocked by that at all.
No, it's just the idea, and
okay.
I kind of floated that out there today. I did a segment with Gabe Henderson, who's a reporter for the Vikings. We talked about that a little bit, and the more that I thought about it, the more it does make sense. I still think it's going to be a premium position, whether it's defensive end or corner, but wide receiver wouldn't surprise me as well.
So now sticking with that, I know I touched a couple months back on how the wide receiver market and how they're getting paid. Obviously, you see it from Diggs most recently, and then Adams and Tyreek Hill, all these guys. and the money that's being spent out to these guys, where I definitely see the value of taking a first round wide receiver that has talent, and hopefully not in that reach mold like a Laquan Treadwell or, Will Fuller, that draft where they all kind of knee-jerk reaction. But there's definitely a lot of high-end talent in this, but there's also in that second round, whether it's the North Dakota State kid, some other guys. But the name that, if I'm looking at the Vikings roster now and going forward, obviously I think Jameson Williams is the best receiver in this class, but the ACL does have me worried a little bit, at least to get going. But the one that I look at, and maybe I'm looking a little too short term on this, that would fit in best with this current roster setup is Drake London. And that's because of his size and because of his ability to go up and get the ball, which really the Vikings don't have since Kyle Rudolph left. Now, Jefferson and Thielen are great players. Thielen obviously in the red zone as of late. Who do you think, I know you mentioned Jameson Williams, but as the best fit, maybe just not necessarily right off the bat, but down the road as Thielen continues to age, is that a Jameson Williams, or do you see, one of these other guys being a good complement to what JJ brings on the outside?
Yeah, I think the great thing about Jefferson is that there isn't a type of wide receiver that he doesn't have a good complement for, just because of how special he is. So I think you just have to think about some of the different roles that some of these guys can satisfy. Drake London, I think, would be a great fit as well. He kind of fits in some of those qualities that they're looking for at the position too. And I think the hard part about predicting what the Vikings are going to do is that we don't have any previous tendencies to go off of, just because Kwesi's a new GM. So you're kind of trying to project what he did in San Francisco when he was there, then also with Andrew Berry. So, one thing that Kwesi is going to value is age. And Andrew Berry has never selected anybody that's 23 years old on draft day. So I think he's going to take advantage of some of these younger prospects. Drake London is still only 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21 years old until next month. So I think that's an area where he could look to value. And the same thing for Stingley. Stingley doesn't turn 21 years old until June. So I think both of those guys are definitely going to be very high on their draft board, just because of the age factor and then also the production. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what Drake London can be on the next level. And I think you're spot on as far as what he can contribute, not only in the pass game, but also he does a lot of the dirty work in the run game too. And if you remember, the Rams require their receivers to inline block quite a bit. So I think that's an underrated value that he also can bring to the table too. So I honestly think London may be the first wide receiver gone off of the board. And, just talking to some scouting buddies throughout the league after his pro day, all those guys said there's no way he gets past the Jets at 10. So he may not even get past or get to the Vikings at 12. We'll see what does happen with that.
Okay.
Bryant, can you recant your draft night story for anyone who may have not heard it last time we talked about it?
We were almost late.
Wait, what?
I said how we were almost late to the draft.
I don't think I heard that part.
Oh.
This is a new detail.
Yeah, well, start from the top.
Yeah.
The night before, we were in New York. So there was David Carr, Quentin Jammer, Mike Williams, myself, and Julius Peppers. So we had to do like the whole little tour thing of every, going around. It was right after 9/11, so we had to go, to ground zero. We had to ring the stock market bell, all those things during that week. And the night before, we stayed at the W Hotel in Manhattan. And I was friends with a popular female rapper at the time named Foxy Brown. And she had a brother named Gavin who came and picked up me and Julius, and he took us to like 3 nightclubs that night. And we got back like super late. And security had basically, I heard them knocking on the door. I was just not trying to get up. And they like basically broke in my room. It was like, oh my God, I heard the man say, oh my gosh. And I was like, I'm awake. He thought I was like passed out or dead or something. And I was like, I'm awake. I'm awake. So I got up and I got dressed. And I was the last person to get on the bus to head to the Madison Square Garden. But I looked around, Julius wasn't on the bus. and I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's still not here. Like, I say he got there like 2 minutes prior to like the draft even starting. Like, came in and we both like looked at each other like, you barely made it. He was the second pick. So it was like, you just got here. But
gosh.
Yeah, we went out, but the person was trying to just show us around so much. But it was like, yeah, but we got to be up early because the draft started at noon back then, you know? So it's like we're out to like 4 or 5 in the morning and we were tired. I think they came to get me like around 10 or something. Like, you know, it was only you had like 4 or 5 hours of sleep and you had to be back up and be dressed. And I mean, I got dressed. I don't know why they couldn't. They walked in my room somehow, and I had the latch on. So I don't know how they couldn't get to him. But
were you hungover?
I was, I think, more or less tired because I was traveling a lot too. I was in LA and I had did a show called The Best Day in Sports Show Period, and I flew from there, and I had to go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, to my junior college, and then they do the Jersey thing there. Then I had to come to New York, drive to New York, and then we traveled around to all these things. So by that time, it was like a lot of like wear and tear on you, and then we end up hanging out the night before, and it was just like you just didn't get no sleep really, so it was like just tired if anything.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we'll get to part 2 a little later.
No, I'm glad we heard that because I've known this man for almost 2 years. Never heard that one.
I never. Before.
No.
We heard.
Yeah.
We heard about getting on the plane or going out to eat and eating prairie afterward and all that. The sequel that we'll get to.
Oh, okay, I'm about to say that basically after you get drafted, they send you to like do interviews, and you get interviewed and they ask you a bunch of questions. Like I told you, they asked me. At the time, it was a new team, so they were like, "Well, who do you know on Vikings?" I was like, I don't even know. Randy Moss,
I think you said you had to get a map out to figure out where it was.
No, I remember. I just thought about initially when they said Minnesota. I just thought about what do I know about Minnesota, and I knew Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. I knew Mary Tyler Moore's show, and it was something else.
Probably
it was
Prince.
A third thing. Who?
Probably Prince. Maybe
Oh yeah, Prince. That's what it was in Prince. So that's all I can remember. I just had a college teammate that came for football named TJ Prunty, but he ended up playing baseball. He was from Minnesota. He always kept saying, like, "You're going to Minnesota." And I was like, "I don't know." And I thought about him too, because I was like, he kept saying it the whole time.
Well, he was right.
Well, at least you didn't compliment the seafood like Kellen did. I'll never forget that. Oh, I can't wait to get to Minnesota. I heard they have good seafood.
Yeah.
Oh, love him.
That's when we started our.
When I got there, so I went
to
like a fair.
That's when we started our little walleye debate.
Oh, I don't remember that. But
oh, you don't? Oh, I was trying to tell you guys that walleye was a delicious fish, and you guys just laughed at me.
Yeah, like seafood though, so that's not fair to for me to give an opinion on something that I don't indulge in.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, Cody, what do you got? Give us another question for Jordan Reid.
Sweet. So Jordan, what are your thoughts of James Cook fitting with his brother up here in Minnesota? Do you think that he fits in this offense decent as a pass catcher? Do you think he could fill anything more than that? Or just be a straight up fill-in for Dalvin whenever he's not available to play?
Yeah, I think he'd be a great fit. I mean, he's one of my favorite players overall in this draft class, and I've said it repeatedly. I'd take him in the second round. I think they highly of James Cook. When you're just talking about the totality of his skill set from what he can do as a receiver, you can put him in the slot, you can split him out wide, and then also you can use him in the backfield too. And there's a lot of tread on the tires too, just because he played in a committee at Georgia. And then they kind of used him as a receiver. The Michigan game, if you're just trying to get a feel of what he can do, that first game in the college football playoff, he did everything that you want to see from as far as a 3-down running back. Does have some struggles in pass protection. I think he needs to clean that up quite a bit. But as far as when you're talking about what he can contribute as a 3-down runner, I think he's everything that you want in the position. So, like I said, I would take him in the tail end of the second round, early third round. He's very high on my board. He's actually my third-ranked running back behind Kenneth Walker III, and then also Breece Hall. I like him that much.
Nice. Yeah, I've been picking up a lot of James Cook. I actually have him. Hopefully we get him in the 5th round. So, I mean, I definitely feel like he's going to go much higher than that now. But you also get like a team chemistry +2 for having brothers on the same team, right?
Absolutely.
Let him wear 33, and all those people who got those jerseys don't got to worry about it.
Yeah, we're all happy.
Hey, Jordan, I want to ask you kind of a entry-level question that I've always been curious about. I want your take. So Monday morning hits, the sports books, the Vegas odds all of a sudden have Trayvon Walker as the odds-on favorite to go number one overall. So that type of thing, or the fact that Kyle Hamilton could fall all the way down to 12 or 13. Where does this steam and smoke come from? Is it agents? Is it whispers from GMs? Is it bullshit? What is it?
So whenever like a big name media person comes out and says something or they release a mock draft, that's usually when the odds on or sports books really kind of alter a little bit. So I think it was Peter King. His column came out Monday over Trayvon Walker. He had him going number 1 overall. And then I think he had some other guys slipping. So Peter King's a very big name in the industry. So that's obviously going to change the odds quite a bit. So whenever you see somebody like that come out and say something or release a mock draft, that's usually when you see a lot of different pendulums swing in different directions.
Is the idea, because, mock drafts, unless they're predictive, almost are just kind of a crapshoot, like, the draft in general. Is the idea that Peter King knows something that the rest of us don't? Okay, I see.
Yeah, he's pretty plugged in. Peter's he's been around the block a long time. Like, he's been doing this 30, 40 years. So he's not just going to put stuff out there just for the heck of it. He talked to people before he put stuff out there.
Okay, fair enough. Ron, what's your next thing for Jordan Reid?
So, Jordan, you mentioned earlier that the interior of the D-line kind of gets weak after the second round. Now, I'm one where if I'm the Vikings, I obviously want either Stingley or Gardner, because I think positional value and talent level, I think that you just can't miss there. And then also Hamilton's the kind of in that third one where, again, positional value with what we have a need for. But a guy that I've been clamoring for, that if those three are gone at 12, that would be enamored if we take, is Jordan Davis. Now, I know the knock maybe on him is that he might be a little Vince Wilfork in him, where it's strictly a 2-down type guy. But I'm looking at, and this goes back to, what I've mentioned with McKinney in the past. It's like, you can't teach size. When you're 6'6", 350 pounds or whatever it is, and he can move as well as he does. I see a lot of potential in his pass rush just because he's close to the quarterback. He's not comparing him to Aaron Donald, but quickest way to the quarterback is right up front. You saw that in the last few Super Bowls when the Chiefs got annihilated up front, and then Joe Burrow obviously got pressured up front. So what are your thoughts on Jordan Davis as far as his fit with the Vikings, but also positional value at that 12 pick if the Vikings were to select him there?
Well, I will say this. I think he's one of the more misevaluated players and misunderstood players in this entire draft class, just because everybody's so hung up on him not bringing a lot of third down value, but it really lacks context. So he played on 18% of the third down snaps a year ago, but Georgia has an interior defender in Devontae Wyatt, who's going to be a first-round pick, and then they have one next year who's probably going to be a top 10 pick. So his name is Jalen Carter, who's very, very good. So I think it's a situation of where they just had some players that were better at penetrating and getting to the quarterback, of where they just didn't need Jordan Davis on third downs. But when he's forced to play third down on the next level, I think he's going to bring plenty of value there, just because he doesn't have those two guys in front of him now that provide that better value. So I think it's a situation of where you would take a chance on that type of athletic player with that type of profile and then that size of eventually figuring it out. But there's so many different things that he does that doesn't show up in the box score, just because he's eating up those blocks. He's doing so many things to keep Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, and Channing Tindall free. That's always not going to show up unless you dive into the film and exactly see what he's doing to help those guys out. So if you just evaluate him on the surface, as far as looking up the stats and things like that, you're not going to be impressed with him. But if you dive into the film and just see everything that he's doing for that Georgia defense, that's where his value lies. So, I mean, I would be a huge fan of the pick. I like Jordan Davis a lot. I think he's my 12th or 13th overall ranked prospect right now. And even though it's not a premium position, I would be a huge fan of the pick.
I do. I like hearing you echo that, because that's what I've been saying all along. It's, first of all, he's going to make it easy on Kendricks and Jordan Hicks in the back. Plus, hey, they've got this whole name thing going on. And as I said, Jordan Hicks, now it's, they can have Harrison and Harrison, get Jordan and Jordan and have all that. But yeah, so I'm glad to hear someone who actually dives into the film echo that.
Hey, Jordan, on the Vikings existing roster at free safety, there's a little bit of a question mark. I think we're operating under the pretense that Cameron Bynum will be the starting safety next to Harrison Smith. Do you believe that is more likely, that he is the guy, or do you think they would draft somebody in round 2 or somebody that they think is awesome in round 4 and start him, or do you think it's Bynum's job?
Well, I mean, they're not just going to give it to Cam, even though I think Cam is probably going to be one of the bigger breakout candidates of this season. I think the world of Cam, the way he played when Harrison went down for a little bit last year. He had an interception in one game. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he played really well. Yeah, the Ravens game. He played really well. Really well. I was hoping to see him get some more opportunities, but they had Xavier back there too to handle some of the free safety stuff. But for him to come in like he did, being a former cornerback, and then contributing or switching to safety, and just how quickly he was able to pick things up, I think that just speaks the world of his smarts, and then how well and how quickly the game slowed down for him. So I think he's going to be a starter next year, and I think he's going to be one of the biggest breakout candidates just because in Ed Donatell's defense, it's all about the edge rushers and then also the safeties, just because they use them a lot in run support. And one of the better things about Cam is just how reliable he is as a tackler, and then also the ball skills that he does have. So I think they're still going to draft a safety. I do expect that just because the depth isn't overly great there. But I think Cam's going to be one of the bigger breakout candidates of this year.
And that makes sense that you would predict or endorse that, because otherwise they probably would have started to, get a safety by now in free agency, even though they didn't have tons of money. But it seems like just by default that Bynum must be at least projecting to start, because it was one of the few spots on defense where it's nada. It's Miles Dorn, Josh Metellus, and Hitman, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, they have to bring in somebody, and just because, Dorn is probably a special teams player. Harry's getting a little bit older in age, but they did give him, the last regime gave him a new contract, but he's not getting any younger. So I think they have to think about some type of depth behind him.
Amen.
So I do expect them to draft somebody probably in the later rounds.
Okay.
All right, BMAC, you got to fill us in on this Zoom call.
They asked for the players from the 2000s era to be on the call, and
who was on the call?
You had
she sounds like a lawyer.
You had Ben Lieber was on there. You had Jared Allen. You had Mike Bennett.
And who were the two most important?
What, the GM and the head coach?
Yeah. You're burying the lead there.
Yeah, they were on there too. They were just kind of asking again about our expectations, which I feel like they're very, for some reason, this is the first that I feel like coaches, GM, and everybody has had these calls. Ever since I've been going, we never had no calls or anything like this about their concern and want to hear our input and how we feel. And they also kind of want to have some type of mentorship. They want guys to come back and talk to some of the guys.
Wow.
It almost reminds me of they're trying to create a University of Miami type of feel.
Which wouldn't be bad, just based on
mentor guys and give them tips on just how to be a professional if they need any advice, things like that. So it's basically almost like an open door policy and inviting guys back in and making it like a family.
Hopefully you're not wearing any Dolphin swag or Raven swag when you're on with them, but
no.
Oh, if they've never they've never done that before, that might be a crazy thing.
It is, because remember, he did it when he first came, and then and the head coach we didn't have a head coach yet.
Oh, that's right.
And then this is our second one, so I feel like it may be a crazy thing.
That's
awesome. It actually ties into kind of everything he said in his press conference, where he tied everything to collaboration and kind of tying that into his analytical approach, where analytics can be more than just the math of how fast someone runs or whatever, that type of stuff. It could be, hey, you did it. Obviously, you did it in your era. What did it take you to be successful in that era? Right. Kind of putting everything together. So I'm glad that he's actually putting the boots to the pavement, so to speak, and actually not just saying what we want to hear. I'm sure there's a lot of fans who have no idea that interaction that you had that has taken place, but it's kind of good that it is out there, because
Aaron Henderson was on the call. There was a player, I forget his name. There was a player that I played with at the Vikings. He works for the Vikings now. I forget his name. He works, I guess, in the front office or somewhere for them. But yeah, it was a few different guys on the call.
Okay.
John Randall was on the call.
Did they ask you who you want them to draft?
We talked about, of course, everybody kind of said their position. I was saying offensive lineman, different people kind of were saying their position. So that's kind of how that went.
Oh, okay. Well, that's awesome.
That Ron, what you're talking about today, it reminded me of his Kwesi's press conference or his chat today, where he talked about the collective nature of this pick. And he actually said in the soundbite, "This isn't my pick." And that's like, maybe that's how it is all over the world. But to actually say that out loud, I was like, I had to reread it, make sure I was on my trip.
Overall, on that call, a lot of people were saying a DB. I want to say a DB, and they mentioned the edge. Maybe it was on defense. It sounded like, from what I got, it was like a DB, an edge rusher. Somebody might have said a linebacker. Those were I kept hearing overall. I mean, I said offensive lineman, but for the most part, it was DB, linebacker, or edge rusher. No. Matter of fact, it was a certain D tackle from Georgia. Somebody had called out like a D tackle from Georgia, and they wanted him.
Okay, fair enough. Mm-hmm. All right, Cody, let's go one more round. What is your final question for Jordan Reid?
Hey, Jordan, I was wondering, do you play Dynasty football? Just real quick.
No, I'm not a dynasty or fantasy guy at all. I always forget to set my lineup, so I just stopped playing.
Man, we got to co-own a team together. You draft, I'll set the lineup. But for real though, what is one homer pick at wide receiver in kind of like those mid rounds, or if I was doing a rookie draft off of talent alone between Alec Pierce, David Bell, and Justin Ross? They're all kind of in that mid-draft range. And they all have some good things on each other. Which of those three would you recommend I leave all my rookie drafts with, regardless of landing spot?
I probably would go with Alec Pierce, just because I think he's probably going to be an instant type of touchdown scorer, just because of his skill set. He can go up and win at the catch point. That's one of the better parts of his game. David Bell didn't test overly well. So he may have some athletic limitations on the next level. And then Justin Ross, the medicals with the spinal cord situation, then also the foot. So I don't know exactly where he's going to end up going, or if he even gets drafted at all. So that's just the tough part
about his evaluation. Justin Ross? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know where Ross is going to end up going. So I would go with Alec Pierce.
Yeah, you definitely think Justin Ross falls way farther than David Bell from that medical.
Yeah,
David Bell. So. That combine, I mean, I was thinking he could be a top, maybe round 1 or round 2 receiver, but now I don't know if he goes maybe until the 5th.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Well, leave it to Cody to snag some fantasy football advice here on Bleav in Vikings. It's on brand for him.
I am on one of those rookie drafts that's before the NFL draft, so it's all about talent. Who has a chance to potentially go highest. And Alec Pierce, he's a sleeper for me, but he reminds me of Dan, what is it, Dan Chesina?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's not a very, very favorable comp for me.
All right, Ron, what's your last thing for Jordan Reid on the Tuesday before the draft?
Well, Jordan, obviously, being 2 days before the draft, I'm sure this is your busy time of year, especially with your network and everything that goes on with that. Now, how much of this, as far as the analysis and everything that you do leading up to draft, how much of it does it impact, how much does your fandom impact anything that you are putting out there? Like, I mean, obviously, I know you are professional, you have your ways of separating that, but are there things that you look at slightly differently being a Vikings fan, and as far as what you would like to see with them versus kind of what you predict and they would do, or do you kind of just have to look at it from two different sides of the coin?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it from two different sides. And I've always been good with taking my fandom out of things and just looking at it from a realistic perspective, especially when you're talking about the Vikings. There's so many different things of where they could go. But I try to put myself in Kwesi's shoes of exactly what he could do. That's why I think I expect the pick to be a premium position, or possibly a wide receiver, just based on some of the regimes that he's been a part of. Everyone that he's been a part of has been a premium position, whether it was, Nick Bosa when he was with the 49ers, and then a couple corners, and also Myles Garrett during his time in Cleveland. So there's so many different things of where he could go in different directions. But I've been good with – I've never been somebody that's gotten attached to players. The only player I've really gotten attached to was Randy Moss when I was growing up. That's who made me a Vikings fan. But outside of that, I've never been somebody that's gotten attached to players. So that's why I've always been like not too knee deep in my fandom as far as with players, because I mean those guys could switch teams in an instant, as we all see. So that's how I've been able to control my fandom and just kind of see it from a bird's eye view and put myself in the position of the GM and try to just address what they would do and then what realistically makes sense moving forward.
But you're attached to Chris Paul in the NBA, is that correct?
Yeah, so Chris Paul is actually my god brother.
Oh, okay.
He's one of my he's one of my closest friends.
Oh, okay. So
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
You're anti-Scott Foster too, then I take it.
Yeah, he's not a huge fan of Scott Foster.
All right, the very last question, Jordan. Our listeners would skewer me if I didn't ask this, so bear with me. Give us your prediction for the Vikings pick, whether they trade back or stay put. What do the Vikings do on Thursday night in the first round?
So I think they're going to try really, really hard to trade back, just because I think they want to recoup some picks that they lost, especially the Chris Herndon trade in the fourth round. But I think they want to get some picks back from where they lost. But if I had to pick one player that I think would be an A+, it would be Derek Stingley, the cornerback from LSU. But I don't know if he's going to be there. But if he is there, I think that would be a home run selection. Them recently hiring back LSU's DB coach and defensive coordinator last year, Durante Jones. He's back. Patrick Peterson with the LSU connection and just the natural mentorship that he would have with Stingley. And then also, of course, with that being a position of need, I think that would be a home run pick. But if I had to give another, it probably would be Jameson Williams, the wide receiver from Alabama. I think that could be another player that could be a bit of a surprise selection, but it makes a lot of sense. So I think it comes down to those two players at number 12 overall.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that Williams one, it's delightful. It's surprising though. But when you put it in context the way you did, I can certainly see it. Sally, any closing arguments for the group before we log off and do the draft in 2 nights?
Nope. I'm just so relieved that the draft is going to be over. The stress, the anxiety. Thank you guys for not making me do a mock draft this year. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Jordan, so much for taking the time, especially 2 days before the draft. That's so cool of you. So thank you.
Actually, I do have, if you don't mind, one last question, because it's a name that I've seen a lot, and it's a name that I've kind of fallen in love with, but there isn't really any deep dive analysis on what people expect of him and where they expect him to go. But Tariq Woolen, the 6'4" corner who runs a 4.26 40, like, where is he expected to go, and what are your thoughts on him as a player?
I think he'll probably end up going in the second round. He just doesn't play as well as he tested, if that makes sense. He's a really, really big corner at 6'4", 200 pounds, but he's a bit stiff in his movements. But, I mean, anytime you're that tall and then you run a 4.2 40, you're going to get the attention of scouts. He's a former wide receiver, so he has the ball skills that you love to see at the position, but he's just the ultimate project. And he does make me a little bit nervous as far as taking him early day 2. I would feel comfortable taking him probably round 3. I'll feel more comfortable there, but there's going to be somebody that falls in love with him. Coaches always love those projects, and B-Mac, you can attest to this. Whenever they can get their hands on that moldable piece of clay, in a sense, they're always going to be fans of that, just because they feel as if they can see the long-term view with those guys as opposed to what they are right now. So I think there's going to be a team that falls in love with what he eventually can turn into as opposed to what he is right now. Coaches just love the challenge of just testing those guys and then just helping them reach their max potential.
Yeah, cough, Seattle Seahawks.
And they like to be able to say they had played a part in the development of that player.
There you go.
Well, the Vikings had success from UTSA. Obviously, that was John Randall's school before it was UTSA, and then David Morgan. It came from there. So we'll see.
All right, we will be back. Thank you to Jordan once again. We'll hopefully have you back a year from now. Cody from Texas, thanks for joining. B-Mac will be back normal time a week from Wednesday to break down this draft class. All right, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for joining. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Later.
Have a good